What's up, you guys? Here with a new video today, and here we go, guys. The next episode of Road to Nats, and this episode, as you can see, is going to be on pendulums. Pendulums is definitely going to be a fantastic contender for nationals this year. Everyone remembers when this was at 3, and what was it? And where is it? Yeah, that was at 3. That was at 3. I mean, the deck was just absolutely insane. Sorcerer came out and just made the deck the best deck in the game, and after that, the deck took some pretty massive hits, and it's still been in competitive play. It's still been evolving, and recently it has really started to come back because of Sky Iris. I know they call it Sky Arc here, but Sky Iris brought the deck back. Different builds were played. Magician builds were played. The Odd Eyes build became extremely popular. I had a couple friends that ran the deck at regionals, and like the main reason why I feel this deck is a very solid contender. It has one really cool thing about it that a lot of decks don't, and every person that played this deck told me this. Now you can take this for what it's worth. They said that if a pendulum player wins the die roll and is able to do what they do, set up what they create pretty unbreakable boards. They create boards that are very difficult to deal with, and most decks just cannot answer the amount of advantage that the deck can get going first. Now, people could say, well, that's a stupid argument. You're not going to win every die roll. That's true. Well, the deck does have a lot of flexibility. Pendulums do have a lot of flexibility. The monsters do, multiple things. One of the the most ridiculous things is their ability to just make a turn one dweller along with their field. Thinking, okay, if I play against Monarch, it's good. If I play against Burning Abyss, it's a blowout. If I play against Cosmos, it helps. That's something just really, really cool. And I guess you could say that about any rank 4 deck, but the fact that you pendulum the guys out, can make a Dweller and make, still establish like an Ignister or something is just insane. The ability to have, such a strong turn 1 field, backed by a trap is extremely powerful. Now, pay no attention to this build. This was literally just a build someone sent me to test. I haven't even tested with it because like you guys know, I don't like playing pendulums, at least this pendulum deck. It's not my cup of tea, but I think it's a really, just the deck overall. What the monsters do is just fantastic. A lot of the, Draco face off may be at 1, but resolving it is insane. The ability, to play cards like Ignite Reload to, fix your hands. The ability, of course, to main hand traps is huge, and you do have built-in like Pot of Greed, and you have a lot of draw power. And a lot of people will say, you don't play, some people play Ariande, some people don't play Ariande. In this build I was sent, there was no Ariande. It's decent, but the counter traps are extremely good against Cosmo, but against Monarchs, you guys already know, with Return, Strike is completely dead. Warning is really solid. I mean, Strike isn't completely dead. You can hit the Squires or whatever other engine they're playing, but still, you really don't gain value out of Strike. It usually sits there while they do their return combos. So that's one thing. The deck is very, very solid, though, for the fact that it does what a Pendulum deck does. It can out resource your opponent. It can summon massive, make massive boards. And I've noticed, like, the way this game has evolved, the more, unbreakable your board is, the more likely you're going to win. The more monsters you put into play that, create, your XYZs, your Synchros, whatever it is you make in the deck, and you basically just say go, you back it up with a trap, you're pretty much good to go because it's very hard to answer an established board backed up by a trap, and I think that that's just really, really cool. I haven't played the deck myself, but, I played against it plenty of times. I've seen, what the deck can do. Sorcerer is the best card in the deck. It just gets everything going, and, you're able to play things that add to consistency. People don't really like the hee-haw, but they put it in there for consistency. You have your Draco Pal engine, with Lecter. I mean, I think it's kind of cool that in the mirror, if it's in the Pendulum Zone, you negate all face-up pendulum monsters your opponent controls. I mean, that's just pretty nuts. Joker is still Joker. It gets you going. Abductors become the MVP though for a lot of pendulum players because every time a spell card is activated, you put a counter on it. When there's 3, you draw a card. I mean, that's 3 counters. Oh, you add one. Pendulum in your hand. But, I mean, that's just nuts. Just being able to search it off and just scale and your spells, and then your opponent goes like. I mean, you build up your counter so quickly, you get your advantage quickly. I think that's really cool. And like the newest characters in the deck, are the Odd Eyes ones. You have the what is it, the Phoenix and the Unicorn. They add to the Odd Eyes engine. And my friend Ed played this deck and was just telling me like how ridiculously broken. Like if you actually if you got Vortex Dragon on the field, it's just nuts. You do have to sacrifice some extra deck space, but you do have the ability to go into this behemoth, and you're able to you really just can't control boards with cards like this. And I know a lot of people are actually, I think it's side decking or main decking Kirin now, the Magispector, the one that's just like very few decks have an out too, and I think that's something that gives this deck a lot of flexibility too. Is that it can, it can really, can put that card out and it can just really, protect it and just, can just win the game off that alone. Now, why would it be another solid check for nationals? It's because if you look at the way the meta is, most people are going to play Monarchs, and if they're playing extra deck Monarchs, you don't have to worry about that hindrance of being able to use your extra deck. That's huge. I know Domain is definitely a very solid option. Honestly, like I had said in videos that I would probably play a Demise deck, but actually, in all honesty, I'm thinking about Domain Monarchs just for the fact that people are going to play Burning Abyss, people are going to play Pendulums. The deck already has a solid Cosmo matchup. The fact that you can play Domain and lock out the extra deck of not only this deck, but Burning Abyss, PK Fire, whatever you want to call it, I think is really solid. It's really solid for that note, too. That's just something like with the rise in Pendulums, Pendulums have been performing really, really well at the last couple of YCSs, and the deck comes back. People forgot about it. People thought, oh no, this deck is done, it's not going to come back, or if it does, it's going to be mediocre. But it's come back and it's really made it's really reestablishing itself in the meta. And I think that's really, really cool. And like I said, one of the main reasons, and you can take this, like I said, for what it's worth, is that going first, if the deck, sets up its board, it's pretty much unbreakable. Usually you win. And I talked to a lot of Pendulum players. They said whenever they won the die roll, they won the game. Pretty crazy, right? Like that's this game has always been die roll based, especially depending on the deck you're playing. But I think it's really cool that this deck will be a contender. If you look at the meta, I've been listening to a lot of videos here on YouTube. If you look at the meta, you have Burning Abyss, PK Fire, whatever you want to call it. You have variants of Monarchs, you have variants of Cosmo, you have pendulums, variants of pendulums. Then you have demise decks. You have a pretty vast meta. It's pretty crazy. A lot of people don't like this format. I actually don't mind this format. I think that you have some variety makes it somewhat a decent format. Everyone's gonna say, well, Demise made everything ridiculous. I mean, yeah, it did. It made Cosmo Demise is pretty insane. But other decks, do exist, and you do have other options. That's the whole point of all these videos. This is the second to last episode. The last episode will be on Demise decks in general and talk about like the certain ones that are out there outside of Cosmo. Because I already covered Cosmo in one of these videos. But yeah, I really think that Pendulums, are underrated for people that don't want to play them. I think they are a very, very solid choice for nationals. I feel that people are prepared for them, but not as prepared as they are for Burning Abyss and Monarchs. They build their side deck to really counter that deck. They don't really come in trying to shut down this deck. I mean, of course, Twin Twister is a card, but the ability to establish your board and then being able to negate a solid Scolding is also very solid in the deck. That was something that isn't here, but that is something that's just very, very solid. I've seen it in action where you establish your board, set a Scolding, they try and twist you, you Scolding, that was pretty much game. Pretty insane. Then you just kill them next turn with your pendulums. It's pretty nuts. A lot of people aren't a fan of the pendulum mechanic. That's what Yu-Gi-Oh's become. You have to adapt. But I think overall, I think pendulums are a very solid choice for the North American World Championship qualifier. And all one knows, what do you guys think? Do you think pendulums will do well at nationals? Do you think they are a solid choice? Do you think they have the potential to win nationals? And if so, why? I know a lot of people are going behind extra deck Monarchs. I totally agree. I think the deck's very solid. But for those of you that want to play something different, do you feel that pendulums are the way to go? Do you feel they have that flexibility and they have that ability to take you all the way through nationals to top, and if not, win the whole event? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching.